Yes, honorable members, this sitting is resumed. Members, when suspension was taken, we on government business, and with that, we shall continue.
Order number 24, sir. In the name
Yes.
of the Honorable Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs, to move the passing of a resolution that Parliament approve under Sections 3 and 5 of the External Loan Act, Cap 94D, respectively. A, the borrowing of the sum of $13.925 million in the currency of the United States of America on the international capital markets by the issue of securities arranged by ANSA Merchant Bank Limited with Consolidated Finance Company Limited as co-arranger for the purpose of refinancing the existing debt obligations of the government of Barbados. And B, the establishment of a sinking fund for the redemption of each issue of securities made under the said act and for monies necessary to maintain and service that fund.
Yes, honorable member.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, sir. The matter for consideration of the Cabinet, as the clerk would have read, is a resolution to permit the borrowing of $13 million US relative to the Class A1 series bonds for the financing of the Barbados sugar industry or the cane industry project and the Barbados Agricultural Management Corporation through the Barbados Agricultural Management Corporation, BAMC. Now, back in 2015, the government of Barbados secured a issuance of bonds of up to 73 million Barbados dollars relative to the financing, as I said, of the operations of the sugar industry through BAMC, and also as an injection for the Barbados Cane Industry Project Cane Industry Restructuring Project through the Barbados Cane Industry Corporation. Now, as you know, the sugar industry has, for some time now, been arranging these, as we call it, sugar bonds to finance the operations of the sector, to ensure that Barbados can continue to provide top quality sugar, which is mainly used for export into the European market under the various protocols which have and have been in place or were in place certainly up until 1995, when the coming in of the WTO would have ushered in a process of a dismantling of those preferential arrangements. Those measures were in place to ensure that we could continue to produce that high quality sugar. Now, the bonds have been over time issued in various amounts and to various values, both in Barbados and in US currency, and in some instances in a combination of both. For example, Mr. Speaker, sir, in 2002, the government of Barbados borrowed had a bond issued in a facility with Republic Bank Trust, Republic Finance and Trust, out of Trinidad, I believe it is, for 161 million Barbados dollars. $161 million. Previous to that, we had one for $50 million, US $25 million, with the Royal RBC Merchant Bank. And we have had even one with domestically with the national insurance for $13 million. In 2015, as per the usual exercise, the government floated a bond or arranged a bond through ANSA Merchant Bank for $73 million to continue that process of financing of the sugar operation. In fact, in total, that would have amounted to debt incurred of 213 million Barbados dollars, 213.1 million Barbados dollars, which over the period of the last decade and a half or more have been contracted. In 2010, as I indicated, we floated a bond, securitized a bond for $73 million to assist with the sugar industry project, particularly in its restructuring phase in relation to that. Now, sometime in 2020, I believe it was 2016, the government effectively took the decision to take onto its books the bonds of the ANSA Merchant Bank, the bonds I previously iterated, and also that of the $73 million from ANSA Merchant Bank into central government's debt stock. In other words, prior to that, what transpired was that the bonds would be issued to the BAMC, the sugar company, and government would issue a sovereign guarantee backing it. Since the Barbados Agriculture Management Company, BAMC, has shown over the period of time not to be in a financial position to service these bonds at maturity, the government took a decision that it would take those bonds over and put them on government's books rather than being, as we will call, contingent liabilities. We put them into government's debt stock to become central government debt. It meant that government then took the responsibility direct, not secondarily through a guarantee, but direct to finance, to service, and of course, when the time comes to finance at maturity and pay off or retire these debts, or in the instance where the creditors were disposed to doing so, rolling over or refinancing that debt with a new facility. On the 2015 facility, it was indicated that that facility provided, by memory, sir, we could call a series of bonds spread over a 3-year period with bullet amortization at the end, bullet payment at the end of maturity of these bonds. Government, of course, because of its financial situation, its cash flow issues, the amount of things that we have to do, and so forth and so on, is always in the market looking for opportunities where we can create fiscal space by reducing our expenditure required at any given point in time. It is a matter that has been advised to government by various parties, whether internally or externally. And it is a matter which government has taken on board. To the extent that that is the case, this bond actually matures in February 2018, and in first part, the first series, and the second series, February 2019. So within a year of each other, basically a period of a 12-month period, government of Barbados would have to look for resources in excess of $73 million to retire this particular bond. ANSA Merchant Bank, the arranger of the bond, approached the government, knowing, of course, government's financial situation and the fact that we are in the market looking for any ways in which we can lessen the debt burden on the country and, of course, ease the payment schedule, proffered or offered to the government a potential opportunity to extend the loan, which are the bonds, which are maturing, as I said, first part this year, second part next year, February. The terms and conditions suggested to us were done on the condition from the government that, and from the Ministry of Finance, that any refinancing at maturity would have to be done on the basis that we would extend the tenure and put an amortizing structure in place to the government of Barbados, rather than, of course, the BAMC. ANSA Merchant Bank, in studying the proposal, came back to the government and expressed their desire to do a facility to refinance these bonds on a face value of Barbados $73 million, with $13,225,000 being in U.S. currency and $54 million in Class A, being Barbados, $13,225,000 in Class A1, and Class A1B being $28,050,000 Barbados dollars. So 3 classes, to that extent, going through for these bonds, and the purpose would be to refinance the existing facility of the BAMC, which of course government would have assumed, that I had told you before, into its central government debt stock. The coupon which they were offering was at varying ranges. Class A, 1A, fixed at 7.95% per annum. Class A, 1B, fixed at 7.45% per annum. Class A, 2A, fixed at 7.65% per annum. And Class A, 2B, fixed at 7.15%. Given the fact, Mr. Speaker, sir, that across the board, the previous bond constituted an interest rate that was actually higher than what is being offered now. The government of Barbados is actually putting ourselves in a better financial position, because not only are we being given a longer tenure, a longer length of time to repay the existing bonds, we're actually getting them at a lower interest rate. So we are making benefit twice. It eases us for having to come up with such large amounts of cash to retire and mature these bonds, both this year and next year when they come due, February, 1 year apart. But we are also getting it from ANSA Merchant Bank at a more reasonable interest rate. And given what is happening in the marketplace, especially where Barbados is concerned, we don't have investment grade, as you know, Mr. Speaker, sir. Our economy is still coming out of the throes of the recession. The fact that one of our major lenders could come to us and say, we are willing to roll over this debt and do it on even better terms than you had it before, is both a credit, not just to the person who's lending, the creditor in this case, but also the lenders, but also to the fact that they have confidence in what Barbados is doing in terms of our economy, and the fact that we are putting measures in place to ensure we keep it stabilized and recovering, and also to the management of our economy and society by government. And therefore, I think this is something that should well be commended by those who are looking on in that particular, at those particular those particulars of the loan. And of course, the issuer price on the basis of a 30-day month on a 365-day basis for a calendar year with an arranger fee at 6% on the face value of the bonds, which would amount to 348,000 Barbados dollars, makes the refinancing of this debt, Mr. Speaker, sir, at this time, a long way to mitigate some of the rollover risk inherent in government's debt profile and assist with immediate cash flow benefits to the government because we have to pay out less. And of course, we get in the US money, so it helps with the international reserves. So all around, there are benefits from this particular facility. We got the money to continue the reform process in sugar to ensure that we have a crop. My understanding is that the projections are that the crop is going to be substantially higher this year than it was last year, and that is because we've had good rainfall, we've had good husbandry in the fields, we've had, of course, the continuation of the process of replanting and so forth and so on as under the restructuring process of the cane industry project. And these resources help us to keep that momentum going as we move towards eventually having the new factory completed when all of the legal obstacles have been removed. So this is a good loan. It helps with the cane industry project. It helps with increasing the production, continuing. It helps with the cash flow position of the government. It gives us better terms and conditions on which we can do it. It helps with the foreign exchange reserves. This is something that we strongly commend to this House of Assembly as the type of thing which government must do and has to do in the circumstances that we are in financially, and will only redound to the absolute benefit of every single Barbadian, because it means that monies that we would normally have to go to pay either in lump sum or increased amounts to service these loans can now be freed up to do other things like fix roads, put in street lights, and do all of the other ordinary things, or all of the other important things, I should say, that government is called upon to do. There was some delay in getting this to the House earlier. The reason why is because in the midst of how this was done, with a Barbados component and with a US component, it was felt that by the technical people, the legal people that is, and the finance people, that this could have been accommodated under the Special Loans Act of the government. The SG came back by way of advice and indicated that it may have been more appropriate, or it would be more appropriate, if this be done under the External Loans Act. And that is why there was a delay in getting this into the House of Assembly. But given the nature of what we were doing, we felt that since the existing facility would mature, as I said, in February, and we had agreed terms with Ansa Merchant Bank, there is absolutely no reason why we should delay this, and that we should bring it to the House of Assembly for approval so that we could get this facility finalized. The bonds can be issued, the loan can be restructured, or refinanced, I should say, as opposed to restructured, and the benefits could accrue to every stakeholder and party that is affected by it in a positive way. It does not mean, contrary to what we have heard outside of this chamber by some people who have been commenting, that government is floating bonds on the international market to improve the reserves and doing it in the dead of the night at the 11th hour or at midnight and so forth. None of that, Mr. Speaker, sir. This is an existing loan that we are basically rolling over on better terms. Government roll over loans on a weekly basis as they become mature and creditors are interested in continuing to finance government's operations and provide financing to government. This happens every day. Not everyone is required for parliamentary approval, but because of the nature of this, we had to come to Parliament. Others can be done without, like the Treasury bills. We don't have to come to Parliament every time we roll over those, and those are done practically every 2 weeks. But in this instance, we had to come to Parliament to do this, but this is a good facility. And as I said, it is not anything new. It doesn't add to the debt stock, but what it does is that it reduces government's fiscal pressures. It makes additional money available to the government to do other things, and it brings valuable foreign exchange into the country. And I see absolutely no reason, given the purpose for which the loan has been put, that is to finance the restructuring and the operations of the cane industry project and keep 3,000 Barbadians in the sugar industry employed, as well as earn some foreign exchange from the sugar exported, and continue to have the type of agriculture in Barbados that is based on proper agronomy and agronomic principles. There is no reason why we shouldn't combine this and why the House of Assembly should not pass this particular bill. And therefore, with those few words, Mr. Speaker, sir, understanding that this resolution is an important and critical part of the process of financial management and debt management of the country, I want to commend that the government of Barbados issuance of bonds arranged by Answer Merchant Bank Limited do now pass by this Parliament.
Seconder? Seconded? Very well. Yes?
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I rise to also lend my support to this particular resolution before the House. And as the Minister of Finance would have outlined, this particular resolution does not increase the government stock, but most importantly, it allows the government some elbow room in relation to dealing with what is really a very important aspect of our debt profile. And in addition to that, Mr. Speaker, what of course needs to be reemphasized is that this certainly allows for the government to provide a focus and financing to the very vital sugarcane industry. And we would have certainly been discussing over the period the whole future of the sugarcane industry in Barbados, and the need, of course, to ensure that the sugarcane industry is appropriately financed. And I am happy that we are able to gain the confidence of major international financial organization and banking financing agency to be able to respond positively to the requirements of Barbados. And Mr. Speaker, what this particular resolution also signals is that Barbados certainly remains, in terms of the ability of Barbados to attract financing that is not onerous, because the Minister of Finance would have indicated that not only did the particular financing agency agree to this particular proposal, but on terms that are even more favorable than the particular loan arrangement, pre-existing loan arrangement. And this, Mr. Speaker, augurs well, because certainly in relation to matters of this kind, we know that in relation to what happens in financial circles, that the international financing community does oftentimes look to see what other agencies are doing in relation to the particular requirements of various countries. And I think particularly at a time when Barbados is seeking to recover from what has been a very long and painful internationally influenced economic challenge, that this really is I have to agree that this is a good indicator of what is happening, and it comes on the heels, Mr. Speaker, of reporting of the economic performance of Barbados. Of course, we are still at a point where, of course, we have to be mindful of the need to continue to grow the Barbados economy. We are reporting growth rates on average 1%, just over 1%, with various projections for increased growth. But, Mr. Speaker, what this indicates is that the economy of Barbados remains an economy that international financial agencies are willing to work with the government of Barbados on. And I think that that is a good sign for Barbados. It signals that, certainly going forward, that we can certainly move forward with a certain amount of confidence that there may very well be other loan arrangements which we can then seek to get a similar response to. In fact, if we are able to do that, it means that we are able to not only do what others have been saying we should do, but obviously in a different way. In that once agencies are willing to say to Barbados, we are willing to work with you, and in that particular arrangement, we are able to negotiate interest rates and the financing arrangements that gives us even greater access to resources that can be redeployed in areas that require it. I think that this is something that is good for Barbados. I hope, Mr. Speaker, that in relation to Barbados's debt situation, that we are able to even get other leverage in other areas that will offer us some elbow room to deal with other areas of development. We have said, certainly coming off the estimates debate, that one of the areas that we know that we have to continue to work on is the whole question of how we manage our debt to GDP ratio, which admittedly, and we have said it and we have confronted it, that our debt to GDP ratio has increased to the point that we have to take action to be able to address it. Of course, to be able to manage one's debt, we need to have a proper focus on our debt management. And I've said in here before, because this particular action here, this resolution which speaks to this particular loan and, of course, how we are going to be able to recalibrate it, is also relevant in relation to Barbados's debt management approach. Varying views have been given on it, Mr. Speaker, in terms of how we should address our debt, international and domestic debt situation. But of course, even as the debate continues, and given what Barbados has had to confront, particularly over the last 9 years, we certainly landed into government on the heels of the world's worst international economic crisis. And therefore, the issue of how we go forward in relation to stabilizing our debt situation will continue to be a major point of debate. I believe that one of the key ways that we have to do that is that we have to look at each component of our debt, and we have to come up, as we have seen in this particular regard, we have to come up with innovative ways in which we could have consensus approaches with the relevant financing agency that results in Barbados having a much more flexible debt payment arrangement, and which allows us then to be able to redeploy critical resources in areas that, of course, that we need them. So, Mr. Speaker, I felt that I had to say this because this is a particular matter I know that I heard on the radio program, the news and so on, leading up to this debate. There was almost a focus on the order paper, which suggests that the government was coming to the House to borrow all of this money and so on. And I'm glad that the Minister of Finance has placed a perspective on what we are doing in relation to this particular matter. In that this particular matter is not going to increase our debt situation. What it certainly allows us, with the assistance of the relevant financing agency, to be able to even come out in a better position as it relates to the repayment of this particular loan. And it allows the government, through this particular resolution, to focus attention on the sugarcane industry in a manner that we have all been saying is necessary at this point in time. I believe we require all available resources, all of our available resources, and in particular, Mr. Speaker, the vital agriculture sector, as diversified as we can have it. The various uses of the sugarcane will have to be part and parcel of how we restructure our economy. And in fact, we know that there's a direct relationship between how we manage our arable lands, our agricultural lands, and our environment. I know that there has been quite a bit of concern in recent times. I certainly have concerns in recent times in relation to the a number of acres of agricultural land that is left really idle without any kind of productivity going on those lands. And I believe that we really cannot afford, as a country seeking to diversify our economy, we cannot afford to have a situation where a vast amount of agricultural lands are remaining idle. And I think that once we're able to provide access to the financing, as we're able to do through mechanisms such as the one that we have before the House, I believe that that too will become a thing of the past, and where more vibrancy can be returned to our agricultural sector. We've just emerged, Mr. Speaker, from the AgriFest, the annual AgriFest activity, and I must say and offer congratulations to the Barbados Agricultural Society and its stakeholders for once again staging a very successful AgriFest activity at Queen's Park. I think certainly from all of the reports from the large numbers of persons who would have gone to that exhibition, and of course the focus on the youth, I believe I want to certainly pinpoint that as being a step in the right direction. But the focus also on sugarcane production, and it is interesting too that certainly this year, given the projections, we are projected to yield even more acreage in tonnage in terms of sugar from the planting of sugarcane. And of course, this is critical at this time because we can utilize and we need every ounce of available foreign exchange earning capacity going forward. And when we have good news to tell, I think that it is important. Barbadians want to hear good news, and I believe that this particular resolution before the House signals good news. It signals that there is certainly goodwill out there in the international community for Barbados, and the response of this financing agency in relation to the requirements of Barbados on this particular matter holds tremendous opportunity and argues well for the future efforts of Barbados as we seek to deal with our debt management situation. I would end by saying, Mr. Speaker, that the Ministry of Finance should be applauded as well, particularly as it relates to putting in place mechanisms to contain and to manage our debt situation. In fact, if you were to revisit the early IMF reports, I believe between the years of 2007, in particular 2006, you recognize that one of the main issues and shortcomings highlighted by the International Monetary Fund was the absence of a proper debt management program, and certainly the capacity to have a unit. I believe I highlighted the fact that Barbados was not, did not have a debt management unit to be able to manage what really is a highly sophisticated area of debt management. And of course, since we came into office, that was addressed through ensuring that that particular capability resides within the Ministry of Finance. And I think that it, as a result of putting that particular capability and focusing on that as being a key priority, that we could have this particular resolution before the House today. And I believe that that needs to be said, because this also speaks to how the government has responded to the whole question of debt management, the way in which we have sought to continue to dialogue with our international partners and agencies that, of course, that would have worked with the government in the past in finalizing critical loans. It is clear to me that the work is ongoing and that there are positive outcomes in relation to how we manage our debt profiling, how we manage our debt going forward in the future. So, Mr. Speaker, with those words, I want to again echo my support for this resolution and to underscore it by saying that this certainly suggests that we are still, in the eyes of the international financial community, seen as a country that is serious about managing its financial affairs, and that I am pleased that our partners in the international financial community are willing to sit down and work with Barbados and to come out with a result that gives us the kind of elbow room and space to manage some critical areas of our economy. And Mr. Speaker, with those remarks, I'm obliged to you.
Yes, I remember.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir, and I want to thank the member for Christchurch West Central for his, I really probably should have put him to introduce this resolution. He did such a wonderful job in delineating some of the very critical issues relative to what we're dealing with. And just to close off, Mr. Speaker, sir, for additional clarity, I wanted to indicate that this part of the loan, the refinancing of the loan, which is the foreign component, the foreign finance component of it, as I said, has to be done here under the External Loans Act, because in every likelihood, persons outside of Barbados will be purchasing those bonds denominated in US dollars. And so we had to use the External Loans Act as opposed to, that's why we have separated it from the main amount which will be done under the Special Loans Act in Barbados dollars. So that is why we have done it in the way that we have done it. But again, I want to commend it to the House and beg to move that this resolution do not pass.
Honourable members, the question is that this resolution do not pass. All honourable members, favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. According this resolution has been passed.
Speaker, revert to government notices.
Yes. Yes, honourable member.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I'd like to give notice of a resolution to grant the sum of $5 million from the Consolidated Fund to place it at the disposal of the government to supplement the estimates 2017-18 as shown in the supplementary estimates number 18, 27-18, which also form the schedule to this resolution.
Member Blaise.
10 o'clock, right? 10 o'clock.
No, we don't. Yeah. Speaker of Government Business, reverting.
Yes.
Order number 19, in the name of the Honorable Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs, to move the second reading of the Cess on Milk Bill 2018.
Yes, honourable member.
Thank you very much. The matter before the House of Assembly is one that I take particular pride in bringing and present it to the House of Assembly. Yeah, well, it seems so again, because these are really good initiatives. This one, Mr. Speaker, and I take a particularly personal interest in this because some members of the House might know, and others may not. I grew up for a great part of my formative years on a dairy farm. Small, yes, but nonetheless, accomplished dairy farm at Lennox Avenue in Goodland in Deacons, owned by my late adopted father, Roger Graves, or Roger Cow, as we used to call him, which rose from a very small community farm providing milk for members of the community near and far, into an established official supplier of cow's milk to the Point Hill Dairy with a fully mechanized operation with the various milking machines and the coolers and the milk being collected by Point Hill Dairy. So I do have some small connection, having worked on various aspects of a dairy farm and the husbandry of animals, of dairy animals, cows for milking purposes, for the production of milk to supply it for Barbadians to consume. And therefore, it gives me a particular sense of satisfaction to be able to stand here in support of this particular bill, because the truth is, Mr. Speaker, sir, this bill, even though it has its genesis in the budgetary proposal which I would have made a couple of years ago, really is intended to assist in breathing some new life into the dairy industry in Barbados. And I think that it is long overdue. There were some technical issues that we had to get sorted out in relation to how it would work. The Ministries of Finance, Agriculture, the CPC's office, the Customs, BRA, the Agricultural Society, and some of the private producers have all come together to input into and ensure that this bill be in a state of readiness for presentation to the House of Assembly. And the reason why we need it, sir, is because Barbados has a proud and rich tradition of not just animal husbandry generally, but in particular, the dairying part of that exercise. We have become known for producing a exceedingly high quality of fresh milk in Barbados, which has allowed many a farmer, big and small, to really make a living in Barbados, to procure assets, to send children to school and educate them, both here and overseas, to allow persons to provide work for persons in a number of areas, not only in the feed industry, feed manufacturing, but also in the production of hays and grasses through the years, which have evolved in terms of the science and so forth and so on, to also supporting those parts of our local agriculture sector that are important for our food security and indeed our livelihoods and survivability as a nation. We are always told that we should grow what we eat and eat what we grow. I believe we should also drink what we produce through our cow's milk and for that instances, goat's milk and so forth, as we have differentiated the market to include additional product. but in this instance, to have dairying as a critical part of the agricultural experience in Barbados. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, sir, so renowned or so high was our quality, both in terms of the volume of production and the quality of the production we had, that we reached the stage where Barbados was able to erect and operate a actual dairy, a full-fledged milk producing dairy operation at Pine Hill, as we call it, the Pine Hill Dairy. Processing dairy. For a small country, 166 square miles at the time, 250,000 people, that was no mean feat, no small feat, Mr. Speaker, sir, because it said that we were able to have an outgrowth of activity, participation, investment in a dairy industry to the extent where you can have a full-fledged dairy producing our own milk to high international standards. And that is extremely important. Now, we've seen over the years that the dairy industry have gone through many ups and downs, from the highs of the 1970s and 80s and into the 90s to the challenges that we had in the 1990s, in the latter part of the 80s and the 1990s, with all of the, I call them, anti-milk campaigns. You know, all of this thing about milk not being good for you, and milk not agreeing with black people going on court, and people not being able to digest milk, it has too much fat, and a whole slew of campaigns against milk, and the proprietous nature of that very healthy natural beverage. And many of us took it on in some respects to the extent where, Mr. Speaker, sir, at one point in time it got so bad that the levels of consumption of milk dropped considerably behind the emergence, not just of these anti-milk campaigns, but the emergence of substitutes, what you call milk substitutes, or alternatives, alternative types of quote-unquote milk, away from the fresh milk into substitutes such as almond milk and peanut milk and all of the different types of substitutes and so forth and so on. I believe there was once a book that I might have read somewhere around the place. I think it's called Back to Eden, which used to make the argument, I suspect that is what it was called, but I speak subject to correction, that the cows don't drink their own milk, and they don't know why human beings want to drink it. All of that it went through. And then we had to have a reverse campaign by the milk producers internationally of something called Got Milk, where they have the milk moustache. And so you understand what I'm saying, Mrs. Speaker, sir, that the dairy industry has not had an easy time. Because as these new alternatives emerged, as these anti-milk campaigns took hold, it means that traditionally people who would have grown up like myself and many persons in here on a good cup of hot Barbadian milk with the skim taken off of it to build strong bones by providing a natural source of protein, as we moved away into other things, milk consumption dropped. Then there was the whole issue of the sustainability of milk as a product on the shelf. So you have to find ways in which to create artificial types of interventions in the milk market as substitutes to be able to last longer. So then we had the movement into the reconstituted UHT milk product that you could put on the shelf and have it sitting down there for weeks, even months. I used to always be, as a milk person growing up, a natural milk person, be always skeptical about this UHT, as they call powdered milk, because I always grew up that milk spoiled. And that if you keep it off the fridge, or if you keep it somewhere in temperatures that are not necessarily conducive for preservation, that it would spoil. And therefore, I was first very skeptical about the fact that somebody could put something called UHT reconstituted milk in a box and keep it on the shelf for weeks and it still be good to drink. But that's the new technology. The reality though, Mr. Speaker, sir, is that as these new technologies and alternatives start to take root, the traditional fresh cow's milk, which is an excellent form of protein and a nutritional form, most nutritious form of protein that is a lot better than popping a soft drink cork and dumping some soft drink that as the wonderful doctor who brings on the program on one of our local radio stations, Dr. Dublin, would call empty calories. Empty calories with no benefit to them whatsoever. That the nice fresh milk started to take a back seat as the consumption levels went down. Then, along with that, Mr. Speaker, sir, was the urban sprawl. As you know, Barbados grew up predominantly in a large part of its history as an agrarian economy. But as we moved into tourism and as we moved into the demands for housing, you had an urban sprawl, and a lot of the grassland areas that would have been provided and been necessary and available and accessible for farming of all types, particularly dairy farming, no longer existing. And people thought, better to do things like build houses and put up buildings. And therefore, there became less cows available. And the stock started to reduce. Therefore, the production itself started to reduce. And with the reduction in the levels of production, it meant, therefore, that as I heard the member for St. Michael West Central saying only recently at AgriFest, an interview associated with that very wonderful agricultural festival that he and his people put on every year, that the laws of supply and demand kick in. As the production went down and the supply went down, so then as the demand began to re-emerge, the price had to go up. And once the price of fresh milk production went up, when matched against the cheaper alternative milk substitute alternatives, then the fresh milk dairy industry part of or animal husbandry and agriculture began to suffer a serious and debilitating blow because it became less and less profitable. In fact, in many instances, it became unprofitable for members of our local dairy industry to compete against this. And the local dairy will tell you that when faced with the financial realities, the economic realities and the financial constraints of having to buy milk from local dairy producers at an increased price, but not having on the consumption end, the demand end, sufficient demand for it because the price was higher and because the taste had changed to somewhat being driven more for quote-unquote health purposes and other purposes towards the substitutes, that it became even more difficult for them to take in more milk in the dairy. And therefore, they had, as business people will always do, to make choices. And they made adjustments, which meant that they had to go more heavily towards the powdered milk, the UHT reconstituted milk, as opposed to the fresh milk that you will get from a dairy farm. And in those instances, only the very large producers, dairymen and women, were able to at least survive in that circumstance. And as we have seen over the last 2 decades, the disappearance of many dairy farmers, smaller ones, some of whom were gobbled up because they couldn't afford to keep their thing open, and they sold their assets out to other farms who consolidated. And this wonderful Barbadian tradition of dairying from the ground up, from the small man, the community farmer, providing, employing, those things started to face a very dire future. And anybody who is close to and associated with and have any care and sensitivity for this wonderful exercise of dairying would have been impacted upon by this type of circumstance, and could not turn a blind eye to this circumstance, and not make proposals to the government to have this situation addressed comprehensively. But this is not the only way in which we address it, and we come to this in terms of the features. But we also sought to work with the Barbados Agricultural Society, and particularly the Dairy Association of the BAX, in looking at a number of issues. We look at foliage in terms of what the cows are eating, to see if we could get better grasses and hays to improve the quality of the milk and the level of milk production. We also work with the Ministry of Agriculture and working with BAX in providing incentives for new injection of new bloodlines and stock into the dairy industry in Barbados in terms of the cows which are available and the quality of cows. The member for St. Michael West Central can speak more eloquently to this. I believe that exercise is already on the way. Some of those cows have landed in the country with the intention of expanding the base from which we can draw and infusing new blood into the production lines, into the bloodlines, into the cows which are available in Barbados, so that we can increase that. But once we wanted to do this, and once we wanted to see an improvement in the quality and volume of milk being produced in Barbados, you couldn't just do it and leave a whole set of production on the line that the farmers could not get rid of. And that's important. That is important, Mr. Speaker, sir. So we had to look at this holistically in all of its parts. And that is why this piece of legislation is so important, because it speaks not just to putting a cess on milk, to say you want to increase the price of milk or whatever the case may be. The resources which will be gained from this cess will be directly re-injected into the industry, to the farmers directly, moderated, directed, regulated by a new dairy industry board, which will have the responsibility for ensuring that those farmers are able to receive the resources to do all of the things that I just iterated, to ensure that their production is increased, their farming techniques are being more sophisticated, their product can be properly marketed, packaged and marketed, and put into the market for the consumer. With the understanding that as production increases, the supply increases, and therefore the price to the eventual consumer eventually will come down. And the dairy has given the assurance that once these things are put in place, they are prepared to rebalance their existing lines of intervention as it relates to the product which they provide, and to use more fresh milk, because at the end of the day, they will tell you that as much as it is maybe economically feasible at this time to use substitutes in terms of the UHT and the powdered milk, there is nothing that beats a well-produced, solid, with all of the necessary butter fats and proteins that are associated with proper milk production. There is nothing better to be used than high-quality fresh milk. Absolutely nothing. Now, yes, you look at the butter fat content, you have to look at that's where you mix the curd. You mix the herd, you don't get only Holstein cows, you get some Jerseys and some Guernseys, you put them in there because they tend to have a higher quality of the, stronger quality of the butterfat. The Holstein cows tend to produce volume, but the milk is lighter. And therefore you see that yellowish cast on the milk that's produced by the Jersey. So you mix the two and you get a stronger production. I know all of this because this is past stuff for me now. You know, I can talk about all these things because we know there used to be a chart when I was a boy and we were producing the milk. There used to be a card that you had to produce with, you had to sign with the churn of milk to Pine Hill Dairy, and it ticked off all of those things. The chart comes back, they analyze it at Pine Hill Dairy, they tell you how much butterfat is in it, and so forth, and so how many solids, and then how much you need to reach to get to the standard which they wanted to get, and certainly below which you were not permitted to fall. So I must say I do know a little bit about how this process works. I remember it was Man Stewart who used to come around and check the dairy to make sure everything is all right, that everything is sanitized, that you use something, a very powerful and potent cleaner called caustic soda, that you would have to wash the things with, and you had to wear very thick rubber gloves because it would cause you to get corrosive, this was called caustic soda, and it's a very serious thing. And you had to use very thick gloves on it, and if you play around in it with your bare hands, you will suffer very serious consequences. We as young boys, of course, never quite understood sometimes never quite understood the seriousness of it. I mean, they dip our fingers in it, and then the next day you see all the skin peeling off your hand. But to the extent that that was the case, we know that there's a lot involved in the production of milk. It's really a science now. It's not just that you feed some cows, you have them out in the pasture, you bring them in, you wash them off, and you milk and call that a day at the races. This is serious business. It's the business of agriculture. It is the value-added component of agriculture. And if we can get it right, at least we may not be able to export it, even though we can do some of that, but I tell you for sure, as part of our food security arrangements and ensuring that Barbadian children in particular have a proper glass of milk to drink when the morning comes, as all of them should. I strongly believe so. I know a lot of members in here, including you, Mr. Speaker, sir, used to line up at school for milk and biscuits and cry if you don't get yours turned too. I know all of that. We had those days. At least I had it at Eagle Hall Primary School. We used to line up, not remember was St. Michael's Southside. He used to get his milk back. But the rest of us, we used to have to go in the line and wait to get 2 hard biscuits, Eclipse biscuits, and a cup of milk in a plastic cup. Remember these lactose intolerant. And in those days, that was not even a word we heard of. Lactose intolerant. That's another one of the things about milk. We used to drink milk. I don't know who was lactose intolerant or not, but everybody used to drink milk, and we used to line up and build strong bones, and you run fast and play fast and so forth and so on. So we know that this is an essential part of our agriculture sector that we must protect, and government willingly entertained the proposal that came out ostensibly from the private sector players in the industry to ensure, and the Farmers Association, to ensure that this process could be completed, and so forth and so on. And the proposal that we then put forward in 2015 was that we would try to increase the farm gate price to 0.25 cents per kilogram to incentivize, and these may be altered according to what the market dynamics are, given that this was since 2015, but that is what we had proposed at the time, to expand the production so that the processor can access additional supply and generally reduce the import quantities of powder, which I talked about, with a subsidy from the government fixed at $1.17 per kilogram. that the subsidy be paid directly to the farmers, not to the producer necessarily, but directly to the farmers, so the farmers can re-inject it into their, and reinvest it into their operation. And that the subsidy applies solely to milk utilized in the processing of milk, which contains at minimum 60% liquid cow milk, that the cess be levied at 2 levels, 5% on the milk containing no less than 60% liquid cow's milk, and 10% on all other milk substitutes. So it's going predominantly on the milk substitutes to assist with the fresh milk production, and that there be established a national dairy board with representatives from among the farmers, possessors, and government to manage the interaction between the farmer and the processor, in this case the Pine Hill Dairy or any other processor who may come along after this, and continually monitor the industry matrix to ensure that the most efficient use of the resources deployed and that the raw milk mechanism be employed, and of course with a government nominee designated as the chairman. So following the consultations on the announcement of this, we had consultations with the Controller of Customs, and the dairy industry itself. The cess on Milk Bill 2018 was drafted to make provision for the imposition of the cess on condensed milk, flavored milk, milk-based beverages, and milk substitutes imported into or processed in Barbados at the rate set forth in the first schedule. The cess is imposed on those products. Shall not apply to products listed in the second schedule, that is for infant use and beverages that already attract the imposition of the excise at a rate of 10%. So the baby milks and stuff like that, they're not involved in this, so there wouldn't be any price increase in that. It should be collected by the Revenue Commissioner of the Barbados Revenue Authority, where condensed milk, flavored milk, milk-based products, and milk substitutes are produced in Barbados, or by the Controller of Customs at the port for all those others imported into Barbados, and where condensed milk, flavored milk, milk-based beverages, and milk substitutes are imported into Barbados, the cess imposed shall be charged on the CIF, that is the cost, insurance, and freight value, the landed value as we call it, of condensed milk, flavored milk, milk-based beverages, and milk substitute beverages prior to the imposition of the value-added tax. So the cess goes on prior to the value-added tax. The value-added tax obviously as the last imposition to go on. The Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs, of course, give this its fullest support and believe that it is something that is very useful and productive for the dairy industry in Barbados. The formula being, as I said, to give a slight increase to those milks, those alternatives and substitutes, and particularly the imported ones, so that those resources, when matched with the subsidy from government, can go to the farmers to assist them in expanding their production. When once we get increased production over time, eventually all milk products will then be reduced in price because we will have more supply on the market than the demand can take up. And of course it will become cheaper, and our hope is that once it becomes cheaper, Barbadians, it will be able to compete with those substitutes, and Barbadians will drink a lot more fresh milk. Not rum, fresh milk. It should be noted, Mr. Speaker, sir, that following the implementation of the cess milk bill, the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs would advise the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Fisheries to go ahead with the establishment of the Dairy Board as proposed by the Minister of Finance in the financial statement to regulate the quota and the distribution of the cess. The Ministry of Agriculture has already been looking at the existing legislation governing the board, there was a piece of legislation that was passed many years ago, many decades ago actually, for a dairy board to regulate the dairy industry, but it was never proclaimed. They're working on upgrading that and bringing it into our current day circumstances. And once we pass this bill, we would advise the Ministry of Agriculture they could go ahead and put that board in place, have it fully constituted, and of course the process begins. As I said at the beginning, sir, I think this is a wonderful thing to do. It has my wholehearted support. I have a fairly positive, sensitive relationship to this particular matter, but even beyond that, I think that Barbados stands to benefit from having a well-organized, properly funded, well-invested, growing dairy industry. And I want to commend this particular bill to the Honorable Chamber for passage, and with those words, beg to move that it be read a second time.
Yes, the seconder? Yes, okay, fine. Anybody speak? Yes, you're a member for St. Michael West Central.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the bill, which is, as the Minister of Finance indicated, our member for St. Michael Northwest, the purpose of it is to impose a cess on milk. I think we have to understand through the philosophy behind it, and I think the Minister was very, very careful to outline the main considerations. But beyond that, Mr. Speaker, sir, there is a deeper philosophy, which I believe that many Barbadians cannot fail but embrace and taking into consideration again, because I think constantly one of the accusations that has been laid against this government in the past is that somehow that they are being accused all the time of taking our eyes off where we want to go. And clearly, when we look at this particular bill, it clearly demonstrates that the government has given thought to how do we develop an industry, how do we provide an environment in which an industry can develop behind, taking into consideration the current practices that we have within our country. And certainly, when you look at the analysis that was done, where the Minister clearly pointed out that many of our taste preferences in relation to food are really in a very succinct way imposed upon us. You know, the Minister was careful in pointing out that there was an orchestrated attempt in some quarters to make persons feel somehow that milk is something bad for you. It was orchestrated. And, you know, unfortunately, what did we actually go to drink in Barbados? Milk that was coming from the same genetically modified foods, such as soybean, okay, that was being produced, okay, and where the countries that were producing the products that they thought that we should take from them. So in other words, here it is that we had a situation being imposed upon our countries by persons in rich companies in more developed countries to force us to consume products which those persons in the developed countries didn't even want or they were concerned about. As a matter of fact, there's even a current war going on between Europe and North America in terms of this whole question of genetically modified foods, because the jury is still out on it. But yet, our consumers here in Barbados are being told by those persons who, of course, they earn rich commissions from the people in the north, because that's their business, importing this thing. And we must give our populations these foods because it's in their own interests, because that's how they earn their money, at the expense of the health of our populations. And what we have done in the meantime is undermine our local productive capacity to produce wholesome, nourishing foods. And this does not only apply to milk, but look at the whole issue of eggs. Do you know at one point in time, there was a whole thing in the international press about how eggs were so bad for you that you should not consume eggs. And of course, we only have to look at eggs, look at coconut oil. At one point in time, they were telling you, no, you should not consume so much coconut oil. How bad it is for you. What we see is an entrenched interest in the whole international food production to basically create a dependence on the part of countries like ours on these imported foods. And even, for instance, Mr. Speaker, you know, we have a fruit here that is called soursop, something that every Barbadian should have in their backyard. And you know, but that particular fruit, the soursop, we hear many doctors across the world will tell you, when it comes to fighting cancer in terms of prevention, it is one of the best fruits that you can have. Yet, we have Barbadians seeking to find out every soursop tree and cutting it down. Now, this is the type of madness that we have encouraged and we have perpetuated. So I know that when you listen to the call-in programs tomorrow, you can hear people calling and saying how, oh, they're preventing us from getting this cheap milk that's coming in from outside by making it more costly. But they're not going to tell you that a lot of the cheap foods that we are importing into this country are what are contributing to the increased incidence of the NCDs, the non-communicable diseases that we are fighting against in this country. You see, because again, we talk in one way, but of course, we have other actions. We have other actions that we engage in. And that is why, again, it is important that we understand the philosophy behind the concept. I also want to make another point. Again, I go back to the fact that where our economy is and the necessity to encourage employment in all forms in our country. Of course, we just had an agricultural festival. And one of the amazing things I want to say to Barbadians, the myth that has been promulgated in this country constantly by those persons who wish to push Barbadians away from the land, that young people are not interested in agriculture, it is a myth and it is a lie. Because at that particular exhibition, many of the exhibitors who actually exhibited agricultural produce, who were young, were more than 50%. In other words, what you are seeing is that what you're even seeing today now, an increasing amount of young people who are very interested in agriculture, who are very interested in understanding what it takes to become a farmer. And not all are more interested in that in the area of the livestock. When it comes to the area of cattle, with nearly 75% of the exhibitors were people who were under the age of 40 years old. Some, and as a matter of fact, one of our winners, a gentleman I know that, remember for St. Michael North, might probably know him. He is from the parish of St. Philip, young man, very young fellow. And he beat out some people who I will tell you much senior to him, still at school by the way, a 16-year-old chap. Now I'm saying that in the face of all of this, the evidence clearly shows that there are young people who are very much interested in understanding the science of animal breeding. What do you need? In other words, to look at the genetics of the animal and see how you can breed the best animals. And you know, these are things that are happening in our country. And yet we have attempts by certain individuals who are blessed with a colonial mentality that we cannot do things properly on our own. And in order to get things done properly, we must always look to the mother country. And in order to feed ourselves properly, we cannot get the correct foods. We cannot feed ourselves properly. That we must look to the mother country when the very things that can solve a lot of the common ailments that we have are right in our backyards. And instead of nurturing them, and instead of trying to find out how can we package these things to be sold, that we can at least use these products as a way of reviving our economy, we are dismissing them. And those individuals who make every effort in that direction, what do? We poo-poo their efforts. You know, one of the most hurtful things, Mr. Speaker, I was listening to the calling program yesterday, and I heard a gentleman calling to say how we don't mind these farmers out there. All of them are just beggars anyhow, and how basically the greedy people, that when they want the incentives that the Ministry of Agriculture offers them. This is what I heard, coming from Barbadians. And this kind of thing is being promoted in this country against farmers who make an honest contribution to the development of this country. This is what I heard. And we do not understand that it is these efforts that if we encourage, these efforts provide a solution to the current economic difficulties, because we did not get there. I want to point out that in terms of milk, Mr. Speaker, sir, Barbados was once the proud producer of over 7 million kilograms of milk per year. Now, we have just gone past out of that because last year or 2 years ago, we had dropped to around 3.5 million. The industry had contracted considerably. The number of farmers had declined. And what we are seeing today is an attempt by the Ministry of Finance and Agriculture to actually try to rehabilitate the industry, to give it greater focus. And there are those who will walk around to say that the Minister of Finance does not have his hands on the steering wheel in terms of moving getting this economy back to where it should be. Clearly, in this particular area, it shows that it does. Because if we can drive production of milk back up, there are huge benefits. And as I pointed out, the fact that we have more young people being involved, what we are actually doing is creating employment for young people who cannot be absorbed in other areas. I want to say this. I applaud the fact that we have been able to grow the number of visitors that are coming to Barbados. But our ability to reap benefits from our tourism sector and what tourists and to increase tourist spend and to benefit from it is directly related to our ability to get tourists to buy more of what is locally produced. And one thing about it is that we have the greatest number of ships who are importing in this country and who are actually sourcing their supplies from Barbados. And traditionally, when it comes to milk, those ships, sir, have bought heavily milk that is produced locally. What we found ourselves in after a while is because of what was happening is that there was no milk to sell them adequately. In other words, the amount of milk that we had to sell those cruise ships was declining considerably. What we have found now is that we needed, therefore, to increase the production of milk. And certainly, the particular cess which will be utilized will help to, first of all, make it more attractive for farmers to increase milk, to increase the amount of milk that they want to produce, and thereby stimulating investment in the industry, because that is the ultimate objective. If we can get increased investment, we get more milk being supplied, and not only that, as the Minister pointed out, sir, what we will see is the use of more efficient methods of milk production, which will increase the competitiveness of the farmers. And of course, Mr. Speaker, sir, if at the end of the day, we can actually reduce the amount of milk that we import into this country for a product, and this is the mantra that we have gone ahead all along with. Let us produce the things that we can produce. And the things that we cannot produce, let us save for an exchange for what for that. So we are following that. And as I said before, we are producing opportunities for employment. I will give you an example, sir. Right now, a dairy farmer, it takes about 2 years for a cow to start milking. And the thing is really that during that period, the dairy farmer, has to actually raise the cow up to that point where it can actually give the milk. So all of that cost of raising the calf to the point where is a milk producer, the farmer has to bear the cost. Now, that is a cost which easily, if the farmer could find a way of reducing it, they will do it. And what we have found now is that there are young people who are very interested in calf raising. And in some cases, of course, the bulls will go, of course, sir, for beef or only beef. But in other words, the calf, the heifers, okay, those are the ones, for instance, that you have to raise and bring them up to the point where they are then can, of course, give off young, and of course, you can get milk from it. But that takes time. And a lot of dairies are looking to see if they can actually get people who are interested in doing that as a separate activity. Now, what does that do? It creates additional employment opportunities for young people who are very interested in doing the things that they're doing. And I want to say this too. What it also does is that it provides the opportunity for us to look at genetics. Mr. Speaker, sir, a bull of any quality in the United States could cost you a good set to get a batch of semen from that. These things were $250,000 US. These are quality bulls. And I want to say this, and I want to go on to the University of the West Indies. I am saying it is time for the University of the West Indies in this country to stop ignoring the agricultural sector and stop coming up with Star Wars schemes to get involved in the agricultural sector and relate to the ordinary people who are engaged in positive schemes. In other words, Mr. Speaker, sir, what we need to see, because the genetics is something now that is selling across the world, and we are failing to take advantage of it, largely because of the fact that the farmers are not being provided with the additional guidance that can be provided by University of the West Indies to help them to do this. What we need to see is a much more applied science. You know, get inside there with the farmers and work with them. Don't get on as if you have a cave-hill and you got the best solution to the industry. You don't. Unless you get down there and work with the farmers and understand what is happening. That is why that thing that they're trying to do at Duke Stadium, I don't understand what's happening. They're taking good agriculture and putting billions on it. Instead of looking at projects that would directly benefit the sector and could actually result in immediate benefits. That is what you need to do. Not to put a running track out in an agricultural area. This is what we need to do. We need to understand what the sector is doing and let us then decide on strategies can help to improve efficiency. And that is what I'm saying, sir, that once this works, what we can see is additional employment being provided to young men and women, because one of the things that we are assuming that it's only young men that are interested in the agricultural sector, sir. One of our top persons who actually showed animals is a young lady. She ain't more than 20 years old. Very excited. She looked good too, sir. Fellas will run after her. I know, you know. But what I'm saying, sir, is that these are, but fact. You know, I know the eligible members of the household, you know, what you think, but agree with me on that. Right? The single members. Right, I'm sure, I don't think the member for St. Philip North is anymore in that category. I don't think so. But the point of what I'm saying, the point of what I'm saying though, generally, no, what we are seeing is that we are seeing now a great interest on the part of these young people in the sector, that they are seeing employment opportunities. But what we want to see is them carrying it further, because the area of genetics And breeding animals is becoming a very important field across the world, and we can actually earn foreign exchange from it. And I really want to point out, sir, that those heifers that we brought in just last year in November have now actually, they have started to produce, and what we have seen as a result, directly as a result of that breeding of heifers, right, which actually helps to improve genetic vigor of the herd, is that we have seen now an increase in milk production as a result of it. And this is something, sir, that I think we need to commend the government on for supporting that initiative on the part of the farmers in the face of criticism at the time. And therefore we have, Mr. Speaker, to laud the efforts of the government in terms of its efforts to stimulate our productive sectors, to make a greater contribution to the national economy, despite the difficulties that we face here at this point in time. And also to demonstrate faith. Because I will say this, sir, that one of the things I want to say too, when it comes to this whole area of the milk, of this dairy milk, land is a precious resource. And I know we have this fallacy around this country to think that we could take everything and put it in a greenhouse. And I hear them say, you know, walking about, a lot of the people who want to take up the land for the real estate, walking about say, oh, you don't need so much land, you know. You take it, you put it in a greenhouse, you can put everything in a greenhouse now. But I want the people of Barbados to understand, the same way that they try to dupe us to think that fresh milk bad for you, so you don't drink it. And the thing is about it, you know, and I want Barbadians to think and understand. When a lot of us are drinking the fresh milk, you didn't hear so much about these NCDs that they're talking about nowadays. People are living longer, they're living healthy, have healthy lives, the children are looking better, everything else. It is only now, sir, that since, I know this now, that as I say now, that since we drinking these newfangled things are up in the north, that the boys getting all get breast sometimes, that walking away, you know, I hear these complaints. The point is really, sir, that we were healthier when we were actually consuming the products that we produce here. So anything that the government does that encourages local production, we cannot have any hesitation about at all. And the thing is, too, I want to say this. I think that when we consulted with the Pine Hill Dairy, I want to make the point. The Pine Hill Dairy is a company that was established, then I think it was the DLP government, sir. If I'm subject correction, but a DLP government, sir, established the Pine Hill Dairy. The vision. We cannot allow, because we talk about heritage, we talk about legacy, we cannot allow the fact that we have gone through so many years, we've gone through independence, and you know, the Prime Minister asked us last year, what are the things that we want to retain, and what are the things that we want to leave it off. We have to think about this. And certainly, we must, one of the things that we want to retain, sir, is the capacity to be able to feed ourselves. And not just feed ourselves rubbish, but to be able to produce the food, sir, that can make a material difference to our lives. And I am saying, sir, that the Pine Hill Dairy, therefore, since it is one of those companies that has played a critical role in terms of providing this country with food that is fresh, that is nutritious for Barbadians, therefore, we have a responsibility to make sure that it does its job, and it can only do it if it is able, sir, to be able to get the milk, sir, that is nutritious and that will benefit Barbadians in total. And you know, and the good thing about it, sir, if you look and see what's happening, note that we have exempted milk that is being used for infants, for infant preparations, for infant use, that has been exempted. That has been exempted. But I also want to make the further point is this. You know, the other things, milks that are brought in here, that you can hear the noise about, oh, we can't make up with the other things. But it's also going to test the ingenuity and the extent of innovation that we have within our private sector. Because I am saying, you know, I see we bringing some things here that all it is sometimes is just the milk plus to add a little bit of vanilla essence or cherry essence, as the case may be, and they make it very rich, And I see some diabetics too, they drink some of this milk, that actually understand, really it is bad for them, because the amount of sweetening, of sugar, I am sure they'll be doctor hear about it, they can say, what's going on here? But why? It comes from overseas. So mentally we have this thing, it comes from overseas, so it has to be good. It is a question, how can we get away from it? So, but what I'm saying though, is that, you know, in the past, the Pioneer Dairy used to produce things such as yogurt. They used to produce, and as a matter of fact, I know that there was an attempt in the past, sir, for it to produce ice cream. It has discontinued those production lines. I am saying, sir, this is not a time for us to want to seek to limit the range of foods that we can produce from our milk. The minister has offered us an opportunity in which, if we can expand the production of milk, what we do is that we increase the range of possibilities that we can actually use the milk for. So besides us being able to better supply ships that are important in Barbados, and milk is, let me tell you, milk is something that is used in so many things that we can actually, we can have uses for it. But the point I'm making is that what that expansion in supply will do, it will increase now the range of things that we can actually produce with the milk. Because the Pioneer Dairy at one point in time, sir, produced an ice cream, a wonderful ice cream. Wonderful. Baiko ice cream. It used to be produced, that's what it was called, okay? No, I'm sorry, but Baiko is not Baiko ice cream. Baiko tried it before, but it didn't work, but the Pioneer Dairy did their own ice cream. And they tried it 4 times. Baiko tried it too. And I heard the comments from Baiko recently about they want to get back into production over here in terms of milk and being efficient. I am saying that these agencies, such as the same Baiko and Pioneer Dairy, have a responsibility to help our milk producers in this country, not to help the milk producers up in the United States or Canada or New Zealand. They have a responsibility, just as how the Barbados government must be able to find avenues for the milk produced in this country. Pioneer Dairy and Baiko have a responsibility to look at possible avenues for the use of the milk produced in this country. They can't shove it on government, and that is what historically has been happening. We have a failure sometimes on the part of our businesses to be innovative in areas in which only they can be, because they have the expertise, they have the necessary management skills in order to do it. Government has provided them with an environment in which it can be done, Mr. Speaker. And I really want to say that there are great possibilities here. As far as this particular bill is concerned, it speaks to what the sector needs, it speaks to what the country needs, sir, at this particular point in time. It speaks, sir, to the fact that constantly, one of the and you hear the economists telling you, sir, that one of the ways in which Barbados can come out of its economic difficulties is if we find ways, sir, to promote the productive sectors. That we need to have other sectors of the economy that are developing. And certainly, sir, this bill provides an opportunity, sir, for the dairy sector in the economy, sir, to basically progress. Let us try to increase the production of the milk, because what we are doing at the end of the day is making our locally produced milk more competitive. We are increasing the attractiveness of the milk, sir, to our consumers. And I will ask, sir, that Barbadians, in the true spirit of national unity at a particular point in time, let us look and understand that we need to improve our productive sectors. The cess on the milk, sir, will help to do that. And what we also need to do, sir, is send out a signal to our farmers over there, sir, that we are prepared to back them. And lastly, sir, I think I have 5 minutes more, sir.
No, your time was expired.
But I just want to, sir.
Make this last point.
Right, make this last point, sir. I also want to say, and I'll go back to the point on land. We have to recognize, sir, agriculture needs land. We must not compromise, continue to compromise.
Yes, sir, you have 2 more minutes. You have 2 more minutes.
Oh, thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. Oh, well, thank you very much, sir. Yes, sir. We must not continue, sir, to compromise the agricultural land that we have available in this country.
You can't do that.
I am saying, sir, after putting in such an important piece of legislation here, we must ensure that we do not further compromise agricultural land that is available, not only for crop production, for livestock production. And I'm saying that we need to have a moratorium on any further applications to cut up agricultural land in this country. There must be a moratorium. There are too many people, sir, in this country who do it so brazenly now that they have no shame. No shame whatsoever, sir. But seek, sir, to go and buy land under the pretense of being a farmer, and all they want to do, sir, is to cut it up for real estate investment. Sir, in the UK, you could go to a certain point in that country, and after that, don't even bother to think it has been that way for 200 years, and everybody accepts it. Where is our pride in this country, sir? When we cannot respect our laws and understand that we're not even compromising agricultural sector alone, you know, sir. We are actually compromising our environment when we think that we can go and erect structures in every part of this country and it will not have an ultimate impact, sir, on the environment within which we are in. So with that, sir, I thank you very much, sir, for your patience, and I wholeheartedly support this bill and look forward, sir, to its successful implementation, sir. Thank you very much.
Yes. Yes, I remember.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir, and I want to give my support for the speech delivered by the last honorable member, the member for St. Michael West Central, who, of course, speaks very passionately to these issues, naturally, because he works directly in the sector. He has a very acute understanding of the issues, I should say the astute understanding of the issues that affect farmers and the farming community in general in Barbados. And of course, many of the things which he said are things which the government can support because it is as important an issue as we could have it, you know. I don't care how small you are as a country, that you can turn your back on agriculture. There are many who would like that to happen, but that's not really where we're at. There is wisdom in having a strong, vibrant agriculture sector where it is possible for us in niche areas to master it to the extent where we can export in some volumes and earn foreign exchange, as we have done for all the years of the history of Barbados. Then we should continue to do so. We should find those out, build those out, and continue to do it and grow it. But where we know that we can establish some dominance, both in quantity and in quality in particular, in terms of domestic production for domestic consumption, we need to give every possible support to our farmers. And I think that we've done so successively over the years with different governments. Perhaps we have not delineated and clearly targeted all of the concessions that we've put in place. We need to review some of those to ensure that they are producing the returns that we expect from them. But I think that there is something to be said of and had from the very vibrant determination and commitment of our local farming community to continue in what is not an easy industry and business. It can be very tough. But they have stuck with it. There are a lot of young people, as you were seeing from the just concluded AgriFest, who are involved in agriculture, who want to get greater opportunities, who need resources to invest in different areas, whether it is crop production, animal husbandry, whatever it is, or even at the intellectual property end of it, in terms of creating and producing intellectual material that can advance farming in Barbados and agriculture in Barbados generally. And we need to find where we can find resources, as scarce as those may be, to invest and to help those young people to continue generations after we are gone to keep agriculture as a critical element in Barbados's economy and society and culture. That is most important. And I think that if we do that, we can see our food import bill come down. We can fight a lot of the chronic non-communicable diseases that we have around here because of a lot of the stuff that we eat that are not healthy. And in doing so, we can help some families have greater and better livelihoods to support themselves and to support those within their community. And so this bill, I think, adds to that overall perspective of national food security and agricultural development and promotion, and therefore I want to commend it to the House of Assembly, and I wish our farmers the very best as they navigate what are challenging, but certainly not devoid, challenging circumstances, but not circumstances devoid of opportunities for which they can prosper and have a decent living in Barbados. And with those words, Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to move that this bill be read a second time.
Honourable members, the question is that this bill be read a second time. Honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to move that Your Honour do now leave the chair and that the House resolve itself into committee for further consideration of the bill.
Honourable members, the question is that I now do leave the chair and the House resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill. Honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The House is now in committee.
Clause 1.
Beg to move, sir, that clause 1 stand part.
Request that clause 1 stand part. All other members in favour of PCI. All other members against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 2.
Beg to move, sir, that clause 2 stand part.
Request that clause 2 stand part. All other members in favour of PCI. All other members against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 3.
Beg to move, sir, that clause 3 stand part.
Request that clause 3 stand part. All other members in favour of PCI. All other members against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 4.
Beg to move, sir, that clause 4 stand part.
Request that clause 4 stand part. All other members in favour of PCI. All other members against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
First schedule.
Beg to move that the first schedule be the schedule to the bill.
Requesting that the first schedule be scheduled to the bill. Schedule. All members in favour of PCI. All members against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Second schedule.
Beg to move that the second schedule be the schedule to the bill.
Requesting that the second schedule be scheduled to the bill. All members in favour of PCI. All members against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Report.
Beg to move, sir, that you do not report to His Honour the Speaker the passing of 1 bill in committee.
Question is, I do not report His Honour the Speaker the passage of 1 bill in committee. All members in favour of PCI. All members against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Yes, honourable members, this full sitting is resumed. Members, your chairman of committees has reported me the passing of 1 bill in committee. Yes, honourable member.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to move that this bill be read a third time.
Honorable members, the question is that this bill be read a third time. Honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to move that this bill do not pass and be cited as the Cess-on Bill Act 2018.
Honorable members, the question is that this bill be not passed and so cited. Honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. Accordingly, this bill has now been passed and so cited. Honorable member.
Mr. Speaker. Yeah.
Yes, government notice says revert.
Mr. Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice of a resolution, not doing it, we're just giving notice of the one on agriculture. The resolution to grant the sum of $48,611,594 from the Consolidated Fund and to place it at the disposal of the government to supplement the estimates 2017-18 as shown in the supplementary estimate number 19, 2017-18, which form the schedule to the resolution.
Honorable Blythe.
Revert to government business.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Speaker, sir, with that, we've come to the end of government business for today, and I beg to move that the sitting be adjourned until Friday, the 2nd day of March at 10 o'clock in the morning.
I beg to second that.
Honorable members, the question is that this sitting be now adjourned until Friday, March the 2nd at 10 a.m. Honorable members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. Accordingly, this House now stands adjourned until Friday, March 2nd at 10 a.m.